What is going on, you guys? It is the F1nal Lap podcast. It is your boy, the American F1 fan, Eric Ringo here. And it is back. I'm bringing back the podcast this year. I was really looking forward to bringing back the podcast. It's a lot of fun for me to do. But like I said, first episode of the new year. It is 2024. We have got tons of news going on this week in the world of Formula One, so I wanted to get on here and talk about it. If you guys can hit that subscribe button, if you guys are joining me for the first time and you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. We do live reactions to every Formula One race. We do videos. We do reaction videos to Formula One videos. We do all sorts of stuff on this channel. But guys, hit that subscribe button. If you guys are listening to me, hit that subscribe button hit that like button as well. And if you guys want to help out the channel, you guys can. You guys can go through my Cash App at cash.app, $Eric Ringle YT 2021. If you guys do that during the podcast, I will read your comments out on the air. So you guys can do that there as well. But like I said, we have got so much to talk about this week in Formula One. We've had Michael Andretti basically denied entry into Formula One. We had Lewis Hamilton now in at Ferrari. And one of the things that's near and dear to my heart is I've made no qualms about it. The Haas Formula One team is one of my favorite teams to follow in Formula One. But this week, a lot of hate was given out by a particular YouTube channel, which I would absolutely love to get into on this channel. So, guys, like I said, if you guys want to participate along, let me know in the comment section down below. You guys can comment your comments down there. I've got the comment section up, so you guys can hit that and let me know. Let me know what you guys think. But let's get on to this week in Formula One as we talk about first Michael Andretti being not allowed into Formula One. Now, I did a video on this earlier this week where we talked about the comments that were made by Formula One and FOM as to why they were not going to allow Michael Andretti in. And so I wanted to bring up, so let's bring this up. So we're just going to go to the screen here and I'll enlarge this a little bit. So basically what this is this was these were the comments that were made by by Formula One and the FOM. So we're just going to kind of read through this and I'll kind of give you a little bit more of my thoughts as to why I think Formula One has been kind of, it really dropped the ball here. So it says on March 22nd, 2023, the FIA published an invitation. Andretti was one of the ones that answered it. And then the FIA announced that they were satisfied with the application for Andretti to join Formula One. So then it was now up to the commercial rights holders and Formula One to whether or not they were going to be allowed on the grid for 2025 and 2026. Now, I will say that when it comes to Andretti, I think it was a little ambitious for them to truly believe that they could have, had a car ready for 2025. I think I would, if I were them, I would have just made it strictly for 2026, when the new regulations are going to hit. And I think that may be a part of why the FOM and Formula One and Liberty Media and all of them have, denied the application for now. At the fact that, you're basically going to build a car for 1 year and then we're going to go into new regulations. So, spending a lot of money in 2 years on, two different sets of regulations, I can see why, it was potentially a bad fit. But then we get into the review process. So it looks like this is not the exact, this is pretty much the FOM statement, but so there were some key areas. I'm going to take a sip of water here real quick as we're. So these were a couple of the areas that they looked into. They the consideration of the likely competitiveness of the applicant's entry and its impact on value, consideration of the applicant's arrangements with respect to the supply of power units and the impact that those arrangements would have on the applicant's competitive performance, research into the potential benefits the applicant might bring to fan growth and fan engagement, consultation with key stakeholders to understand their view of the value, and then some of the different items that they would be else looking at: consideration of the operational impact on adding an 11th team, consideration of the likely impact of the applicant's entry on the commercial rights holders, consideration of the applicant's financial stability. So basically, let's break down these first four that we saw. Now, if we're breaking it down, I think, and this is the way that most, I think, Formula One fans have kind of broken this down when it comes to, when Formula One fans thought that they should be joining the grid in 2025 and 2026. So the consideration of likely competitiveness of the applicant's entry. I think we're all in agreement that Andretti wasn't just coming into this sport to take up another spot on the grid. Like, they are coming in to be competitive from moment one, from the moment they hit the track. Like, that is what Andretti does. We've seen it in IndyCar. We've seen it in Formula E. We've seen it in Extreme E. We've seen it in a lot of different racing categories where Michael Andretti has really put his foot forward and put the best team and the most competitive cars out on whatever grid they're in. So I cannot foresee a circumstance in which they would come into Formula One and they would decide, I really don't, I just want to be there for 2025, and then 2026 will be the year that, we maybe take a step. I truly think that coming into 2025, they were going to attempt to push as a midfield team, try to push to the top. I mean, obviously it's going to be really hard with the likes of Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, those top teams, really having, the luxury of, being in these regulations for several years. So that's one of those things that, we know that Andretti wasn't going to be pushing for those top spots, but, we knew that they were going to be, at least coming into the sport, attempting to put their best foot forward. So then, moving on, consideration of the applicant's arrangements with respect to the supply of power units. So we know that eventually they were going to work with Cadillac and with GM, and GM's been working with them at their facilities in both North Carolina and over in Europe as well. They've been really working hard. They've got about 150 plus employees that are working between those two supply areas. The fact that GM, I think, wanted to get a handle on what the new regulations were going to be before jumping in and, trying to make a power unit just for 2025. So we all knew that the basic agreement was going to be that Andretti was going to use Renault engines for 2025. And then obviously with the new regulations coming in, it was going to be new engine regulations, new chassis regulations, downforce, that whole package was going to be new going into 2026. We know that GM was going to then be involved going forward. So the fact that they were going to use Renault for 1 year and then move over to GM, from 2026 on, more specifically Cadillac, although Cadillac falls under that GM, the GM umbrella. So I think that, with all that being said, Renault's fine. Renault, we all know the power unit is not up to snuff. Like, it's one of the lowest performing cars. They even tried to get, a waiver to at least try to allow more, work on their engine to get them almost equal with, the likes of with Red Bull and with Mercedes and with Ferrari. They were trying to get that passed. That didn't happen, so that ended up going by the wayside. So Renault's performance, compared to the other guys, is not, anywhere where it needs to be. So, we have to kind of think that Andretti would have been on the lower side of the grid. But still, just knowing that GM would be coming into the sport, coming into 2026, that would give us 6 different power units within Formula One. Obviously, going into 2026, you're going to have Ferrari and you're going to have their customer teams. You're going to have Audi. You're going to have Ford, which is working with Red Bull for their engines. You're going to have Mercedes. You're going to have Audi. That was 5. And then you add GM, which would have been 6. Literally, it would have made it to where almost every car on the grid has a different engine manufacturer, which I think would have been really good excuse me, for Formula One in the grand scheme of things, because now you have, a choice of power unit, and you're giving a lot of these teams a more wide ranging choice of engine suppliers. So I could see why that would have been a really good, move for Formula One to allow Andretti to come in and allow allow another power supplier into the company. But then moving on, researching the potential benefits the applicant brings, I think we can all agree that Andretti is a huge name in motorsport. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Like, when you hear Andretti, you think of Mario and Michael Andretti in auto racing, and to have that name back within Formula One, where Mario made a huge name for himself in Formula One in his younger days, then moving back over to the States. Michael, didn't have as great a great career in Formula One over in Europe, but I believe if I remember correctly, Michael did win at least one race. I may be mistaken in that. But, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, Andretti's a huge name in motorsport, and bringing Andretti to Formula One only helps Formula One even more. I mean, for the sport, wanting to become big in the United States, yes, we have Haas, but, Andretti, we know, is coming into Formula One, and they truly will push on the whole, they're an American team in Formula One. We were going to have the likes of probably Colton Herta joining the grid. Maybe another potential American joining the grid. We don't know, what that potential driver lineup would have looked like. But having Andretti in Formula One only brings, more eyes to the sport of Formula One. Not necessarily, I think, the other way around, which as we get into the discussion, that ended up really being the case. But then, moving down, consultation with key stakeholders to understand their view and the value, that kind of goes, hand in hand with number 3, and what they were talking about there. So generally, now we get into what Formula One and the FOM and everybody really thought about their potential entry into Formula One. Excuse me. So our assessment process has established that the presence of an 11th team would not in and of itself provide value to the championship. Any 11th team should show that its participation and involvement would bring a benefit to the championship. Most significant way in which a new entrant would bring value is by being competitive, in particular by competing for podiums and race wins. So basically what FOM is telling us here, and Formula One and Liberty Media and all that, they're telling us that basically you need to be the likes of Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull as soon as you enter the sport. Not just a midfield fighting team, but, you need to be pushing Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari, which, I mean, if we held that standard, even 6-7 years ago when Haas joined Formula One, Man, Haas wouldn't even be on this grid. We'd be at 9 teams right now in Formula One. Now, I know that there's a lot of people that are going to say, well, yeah, Haas is barely on the grid anyways, and we'll get into more Haas talk. But, it had Formula One, held that standard, there's a lot of teams that wouldn't be in Formula One right now. There'd be, I mean, if you were to hold that standard for a lot of these teams, you could probably kick several teams off the grid, based on that statement alone. So then going on, it says the application contemplates an association with General Motors that does not initially include a power unit supply, with an ambition for a full partnership with GM as a power unit supply in due course. Now, the way I understood that when Andretti was coming into Formula One was it wasn't going to be 2025, but it was going to be 2026, because in 2025, and I think probably later this year in 2024, they're going to announce the new regulations for 2026. So that would give time to GM to really be able to build a power unit supply and be able to build what they need, what Andretti would need going forward through 2026. So with them to say that this was not going to be the case for some years, I find a little questionable. I don't know if maybe, excuse me, maybe if, FOM and Formula One were thinking that GM just wasn't going to, going to be there, for 5 years or whatever. I don't know what that case was, and I don't know how much they talked to GM when it came to them. So, but that's kind of where they were going. I think they're making an assumption here that General Motors was not going to be on the grid. So then moving on, 2025 will be the last year of the current regulatory cycle. 2026 will be the first year of a subsequent cycle in which an entirely different car to the previous cycle will be required. Now, that's the thing, is we still don't know what is going to be the regulations going into 2026. We still don't know that. And we've seen I think Andretti's got an 80% size, 60 or 80% size car that fits within the Formula One regulations now. They're working on wind tunnel for that. And so I truly think that, it's, to say they're a novice constructor and the fact that they would be coming into 2025 and then the very next year design and build a completely different car under the 2026 regulations, that they were going to have a hard time. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. We've seen, with Andretti Racing and Formula E, they've been able to make the changes, very quick. They're very quick on the steps. So I don't necessarily see why they would have had that problem going into 2026. Then going on, it says, we do not believe there's a basis for any new applicant to be admitted in 2025. I get that. I can kind of see it. That's why I was saying that maybe Andretti needed to just, focus on 2026. And then the very last one here, coming into a sport as a new power unit manufacturer is also a huge challenge with which major automotive manufacturers have struggled in the past, and one which can take a manufacturer a number of years of significant investment in order to become competitive. GM have the resource and credibility to become more than capable of attempting this challenge, but success is not assured. Absolutely right. I agree with that. Success is not assured, but the fact is that if you're going to sit there and say that they're more than capable of attempting this challenge, then why not give them the opportunity? I feel like giving them the opportunity would have been the best thing for Formula One and what they could have done. So it's a little sad to see, but I think giving them the opportunity would have been their best bet. All right, so now moving on to conclusions. Excuse me, of a commercial assessment. It says our assessment process established that the presence of 11th team would not on its own provide value to the championship. The more significant way in which a new entrant would bring value is by being competitive. We do not believe that the applicant would be a competitive participant. And this is, I think, where a lot of Formula One fans were like shaking their heads, going, like, what is, what are they? We don't understand what their thought process is here. Andretti is going to be competitive coming in. Now, yes, you could say, had you said, all right, we'll allow you for 2026, but 2025, no, we want you to wait another year till the new regulations come out. Fine. And I truly believe at that point, especially with the announcement coming later this year of what the new rules package will be, it makes sense that they can be a competitive team. And so for them to say this, that we don't believe the applicant will be a competitive participant, is just, it's absolutely asinine to say that Andretti was going to come into the sport and not be competitive. Based on our thoughts of what a competitive participant would be, not necessarily what Formula One thought the competitive participant would be, which is fighting for wins and podiums, straight off the bat. Let's see, the need for any new team to take a compulsory power unit supply, potentially over a period of several seasons, would be damaging to the prestige and standing of the championship. Again, if you were to hold this to the same standards, there would be nearly half the teams off this grid. It's a silly comment to make by Formula One, Liberty Media, and all them. Excuse me, I just don't understand. Again, Formula One's not making any sense with, their reasoning behind all of this. So then, while the Andretti name carries some recognition for Formula One fans, our research indicates that F1 would bring value to the Andretti brand rather than the other way around. Oh, it's not, dude. They're close-minded in their thinking. Yes, they're thinking about F1 fans, but they're not thinking of all the other auto racing, disciplines that hear that Andretti name, and you bring them into Formula One, and you're going to bring them into Formula One by having the Andretti name on the F1 grid. So again, this is F1 and Liberty Media thinking a little bit too highly of themselves, I think, if we're being totally honest with ourselves. So then moving on, the addition of 11 team would place an operational burden on race promoters, would subject some of them to significant costs, and would reduce the technical operation and commercial spaces of other competitors. We're not able to identify any material expected positive effect on the commercial right holders' financial results as a key indicator of the... Again, and I called this in the video when I talked about this initially, it's literally word vomit coming from Formula One, trying to, spew these just ridiculous words to make to make themselves sound smarter than they really are. But I think all in all, when we really look at, Formula One and Andretti, we all know and truly understand that Formula One has made a huge mistake by not allowing Andretti on the grid for at least 2026. And it could come back and bite him in the ass. And I don't throw this around lightly, because I think when it comes to, Formula One in the United States, we had we kind of had Formula One ruined for us back in the early 2000s of Formula One, when we had the USGP debacle, and the tire supplier debacle in 2005, where literally it turned into, every car retiring except for 6. Like, that really ruined the sport in the United States there for a long time. And now, being able to get back, back into the US and back really to, you know, doing what they needed to do to bring back fans in the United States, like, you're not doing yourselves any favors here again. And a lot of fans, I think, in the US are like, there is a legitimate concern that there is a bias from, from European teams, from, the sport of Formula One and its European backgrounds against those of the United States and teams of the United States and tracks of the United States. There's a lot of fans that feel like that bias is there, and I'm starting to become more and more of the thought process that may be the case. So now moving on, obviously another big news story this week was Lewis Hamilton joining Ferrari. Now, this really broke, I believe it was Wednesday or Thursday, I believe it was, where we started hearing rumors that Hamilton was getting ready to sign with Ferrari. Now, I also did a video on this as well, where I talked about it was kind of funny timing that all of a sudden we started hearing, the rumblings that Hamilton was moving over to Ferrari, when just the day before we got the notification that Andretti wasn't going to be allowed to join the grid. I find it, I find it a little bit, I know there's a lot of people that are going to say, oh, it's just a coincidence, no big deal. I, on the other hand, don't see it that way. I think this was, as we got fighter jets going over my house, I think this was more of a calculated move by Formula One, by Ferrari, by Mercedes, in their move by putting this out there, because I think a lot of people for, that whole day of was only talking about Lewis Hamilton joining Ferrari, and, people started to forget about Andretti not being allowed into Formula One. Now, I don't, for one, want that to be the case. We need to keep, talking about the fact that Andretti wasn't allowed in, when I think everybody agrees that they should have been allowed into Formula One. But, coincidence or not, Lewis Hamilton moves over to Ferrari, breaks the contact with Mercedes. As we know, Lewis Hamilton joined Mercedes in 2013, took over for Michael Schumacher there at Mercedes, and he had just signed an extension till 2025 with Mercedes. So I'm really interested to know. So it does say, hold on. There's something going on with, there isn't. Just checking. Okay, there we go. We're going. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. For some odd reason, it was acting very funny as we were sitting here. Just making sure this is running correctly. Okay, good. Sorry. It was running very weird. But yeah, so Lewis Hamilton activated a release option in his contract. Now, I would be really interested to know, and we may not know for a while what that release, why he kicked in that release option. Now, for all intents and purposes, from what Toto Wolff has been saying this offseason, they have made huge gains in with the W15 going into 2024. They had found a lot of time that they were losing last season. Toto Wolff was putting kind of a, maybe putting lipstick on a pig's face, saying, that the car has gotten really extremely better. And that may not necessarily be the case. And Lewis Hamilton was seeing that, they weren't making the necessary improvements that would, basically want him to stay at Mercedes. And I think that's probably more truly the case than anything else, is that Lewis was seeing the writing on the wall at Mercedes. They just weren't making the move, the improvements to the car that they were needing to make. And it truly, I think, hurt them in the long run, and it caused Lewis to say, you know what, I can't sit here and deal with this anymore. I'm going to move on, move to Ferrari. Now, granted, Lewis has said in the past that Ferrari was kind of his dream drive in Formula One. So it does make sense from that standpoint that we get, Lewis moving over to Ferrari and signing a multi-year contract with Ferrari. So that makes sense in that regard. But I really want to know, because obviously there had to have been something else that happened at Mercedes that really, made this move become more of a reality. And, I'll be really interested to see in 2025, really interested to see what Lewis will be able to do in a Ferrari. Obviously, that'll be the last season of the old regulations before we move into 2026. So it'll be really interesting to see what he can do with that car. See if he can push it and fight Max Verstappen for a championship potentially. But I also have to wonder too. We've seen the videos out there with Charles Leclerc being asked about teammates and during press conferences and whatnot. You have to wonder if Ferrari did not already, we know that Ferrari was obviously, pushing it out there as it was, to potentially sign him. But, I just wonder, like, what all of a sudden flipped the switch in the offseason for Lewis Hamilton to make that jump instead of not potentially making the jump this year. And then, if we look at it from another standpoint, I think Carlos Sainz gets absolutely screwed, on this one, where, Carlos really put in a great performance last year for Ferrari. And I heard one of the F1 YouTubers that I love watching, one of the content creators that I love watching, Ben Daly, Tiamat Marduk, he made a really good point this year, or earlier today on his live stream. He was talking about how Carlos Sainz is a really good, that he's not good enough to be first driver, but he's way too good to be a second driver. Like, he's in that weird middle position. Like, he's the 1.5 driver, whereas, if you need him to lead the team, he kind of can, but like, not necessarily bad enough to be only the second driver. And it's a shame that he's lost his seat, especially after last season being the only non-Red Bull driver to win a race last year. That sucks that he lost his position, but now you have to wonder, where is he going to go going into 2025? With Mercedes having an open seat in 2025, maybe there, potentially to Alfa Romeo, which will turn into Sauber next year. It's just, it's very interesting, and I'll be really interested to see, where Sainz goes. And I think 2025 silly season may be a lot more of what we've been looking for in the past, because Alex Albon's contract is up. There is just a number of contracts that come up in 2025, and we could see a really huge shakeup on the F1 grid, which now we have with the likes of Lewis moving over to Ferrari. But definitely we can see more moves coming up, going into the 2025 season. All right. So now, moving on to my favorite topic of the day. and I'll have to put on my headphones for this. Um, Haas has announced Haas has been the first team to basically show the new car for this season. So if you guys hadn't seen the pictures going into this season, I think it looks pretty dang slick myself. Especially knowing with what Haas typically have done. I know there were a lot of people that didn't like the front nose. One of the other YouTubers that I watch, Tomo, really loves the Haas on the side pod. They really it wasn't just a sticker this year, and they made it more look, fall into the design of the car this year, which I think was which was really good. I think truly they really, it's not a home run. It's a lot of the same things that we've been getting in the past. With the cars, they're going to more of this, black livery, where, a lot of it's carbon fiber. It's more of a carbon fiber look as compared to like actually painting the car, which, yes, I think as Formula One fans, I think we hate this too, as an absolute passion that, we've literally had to focus, that we've had to change up paint jobs so much that we have to strip down as much paint as we can and just use carbon fiber, as a color. Like it's disheartening. But I mean, if you look at the history of the Haas, they've typically always used that black. It's not anything new for them to use the black, white, and red, paint scheme. And I think this, I mean, if you're really looking at this, this is a rendering of Nico Hulkenberg's car. Looking at it from the top down, which we typically won't ever do, but like looking at it from the top down, this looks really, really slick. It almost kind of gives you to me at least, it almost kind of gives you, looking at it, as a spider look, with the white, this white and red line that you have here right on the side pod, right above the Haas logo. Going down either side, it kind of gives me that spider feel, which is kind of cool. But I think it was truly good. It truly, looks good. I wish they could get away from the carbon fiber, and I know there's a lot of Formula One fans out there that are of the same ilk, that we need to allow these teams to go back to using more of the paint and not forcing so much of this weight reduction on these teams, because then this is what we get. So now I'm going to put my headphones on because we're going to switch over and we're going to do a little bit of live reacting here on our channel. As I typically like to do from time to time, I like to do reaction videos to certain things on our channel. It's one of my favorites. So I'm going to come back here for just a split second as I switch over. So one of the Formula One channels out there that I try to watch, I try to listen to their podcast. They do a really good job with their podcast, and it's a decent watch at times, is the P1 podcast with Matthew Gallagher and Tommy Bellingham, I believe is his name. I hope I got that right, because I'm getting ready to kind of go in here as we're going to react. They put out a podcast to their reaction to an underwhelming 2024 Haas F1 car launch. Now, like I said, I'm getting ready to to react to this. This will be a very interesting reaction, as you will clearly see. So we're gonna go full screen here. Get them up on full screen. So there you see Matthew Gallagher. But let's react to what they had to say during the F1 car launch, for them to say, our reaction to an underwhelming 2024 Haas car launch. So let's get into this video real quick, and we'll pause it quite a bit and make comments to it. So
our reaction to the 2024 Haas F1 car launch.
There's a car.
Oh, there's...
And lights on.
Oh, it's...
Very similar. A better version of last year. It looks cool.
Is it more white?
More black. Oh, no.
Oh, I thought it was more... If it is...
It looks really cool, but I'm very concerned that every car is not going to be black because McLaren...
And this is so, when we started this, Tommy does bring up a good point. We have to start wondering, is this just going to be the underwhelming, theme of F1, which is we're going to literally have just carbon fiber bits and barely any liveries, which I think we all get excited when they do, when we get to see F1 livery reveals and F1 car reveals. We look forward to seeing what the livery will look like. And, just to see that, we see more carbon fiber bits on a car is a little bit disheartening. So I understand exactly where Tommy's coming from here.
Aaron got rid of all the blue and were very much black with a bit of orange.
Oh, it's so underwhelming. I hate it. Make more effort, Formula One teams. Car launches are a special time of the year. Rolling out a minute video that didn't even premiere properly to then show us a car that's...
Now, I will say, I was watching their stream live, and I can totally understand potentially where that was coming from. But now I watched, and I think I even did a live stream to it last year, I did a live stream to the AlphaTauri car launch, and it did the exact same thing that they said happened here, which was there was no video that played. There was supposed to be this 5-minute long video, and it never showed up. We had to refresh the stream 3 or 4 times before it came up. Now, I will say to Matt and to Tommy here, have you guys ever, in the season since Haas has joined the Formula One grid, have they ever went to this great production value of introducing their cars every season? Have they ever done this big production value, wasted tons of money on a having, all the bells and whistles and all this blah, 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 all this pomp and circumstance to introduce a car? I'm of the understand, or at least this is the way I am. I think teams waste too much money on all of that. I think what we're there for is the car reveal. We could have probably had a 3 to 5 minute video with, Io Komatsu and, Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg talking about the new car. I can see that maybe, but to absolutely rail on Haas about their car launch video, this is what Haas have done in the past. Why are you surprised? You're acting like that Haas, this is the first season that Haas has done something like this. Typically, Haas just release pictures and, no video to go along with it. So, I don't understand why the hate here on Haas. I hope that they have the same, the same energy when other teams may do this later on in the season. So, but I digress.
Just
we'll move back.
Very average. I want to hear
the first one.
I want to hear Gunter Steiner's replacement talk to me about how much we all miss Gunter. Let's get our first thoughts out the way. No. It's probably the most boring.
I'm sorry. We need to stop. This whole Gunther Steiner stuff, it needs to stop. He is gone. He is gone from Formula One, and I said it in a video right before I kind of went in on my break. Gunther and Simone Resta needed to be fired from Haas. Like, there was just there has been no improvement with this team, and it seems like more and more Haas was trying to be more of a Gunther was trying to be more of a Toto Wolff, Christian Horner, where they're kind of out there at the front of their teams, obviously, along with their drivers, and they really make a lot of statements. And Gunther was trying to be like Toto and Christian, but the problem is that he's not as successful, running the Haas Formula One team as those guys are. Toto and Christian have both won World Drivers' Championships, Constructors' Championships, so they have every right to be out there as as team bosses really talking about the car. Gunther didn't have that luxury. Gunther has literally, Gunther had really kind of, I don't want to say dragged the team down, but there has been no improvement from this team since the team joined the grid. I think it was back in 2016, 2017. They have steadily declined every single season. And the fact that, that they want to hear from Io Komatsu, about Gunther Steiner and blah, 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 blah. I don't care. Gunther is gone. Let's get over it. Like I said, he was trying to be too much like Toto Wolff and Christian Horner when he didn't necessarily deserve to be like Christian Horner or Toto Wolff. And I think to a certain extent too, he started to get too mixed into a lot of stuff outside of Formula One. There was talk that he was in talks with CBS about, potentially doing an office style type TV show about a Formula One team. And I don't need that. I need you to focus on getting the freaking car back up the grid, Gunther. That's what we needed at Haas. And there are people that are saying, we don't understand why Gene is not putting any money into this team. Well, when you see what Gunther was doing as a team boss, why would you want to put money in? He's doing nothing that was improving the team from his side. I mean, he's one of the key, figures in the whole Mick Schumacher, Nikita Mazepin, saga that we had 3 years ago. What? Nobody should forget that Gunther was a part of that. Gene was just as much to blame in that, but Gunther was just as much to blame as anybody else. They literally bought in 2 pay drivers, and it bit them in the ass. So I don't want to hear this constant, Gunther is gone for a reason. He was not moving this team forward. If anything, he was moving them back. And the fact that they finished 10th in the standings this year is all the more, I needed to hear from Gunther. We just needed to move on. Okay, so moving on.
Clean car. You'll probably see. It looks good. And if it was a unique, one-of-a-kind thing, you'd go, that's quite a... I love the black, and then the accents of the white, and then the red. But we're very much in a part of Formula One where this is normal. This is not any kind of sideways step when it comes to livery design. This is straight down carbon vibes with a bit of accents for the team branding.
You're right.
Well, and that's the way Formula One has now gone, unfortunately, because we're so worried about weight. We've made the team so worried about weight that they think even just adding extra paint to the cars will be a huge deal, and it's silly as Formula One has gone.
A few years ago, when this would have been really exciting, and I think when the cars were painted. Throwback to 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, just 3 or 4 years ago.
Think about now, and that's why it's kind of so annoying. I think it would have looked really, really cool. but we may or may not see a black Mercedes or carbon Mercedes again.
Oh yeah, I guarantee you we're getting another black Mercedes this year, a carbon fiber Mercedes this year. I have no doubt in my mind this year. I mean, and the fact is, Team Stake is going to basically be the same way, and I think Tommy covers that in this video. Maybe I know he covered it during the live stream. Is that we're gonna get a Stake Formula One team that may have some lime green built into the car, but like it's gonna be predominantly another carbon fiber car, and it's sad to see that that's the state of Formula One now, that we're that worried about weight that we just won't allow, like we don't want to add any extra paint to the cars.
Which is going to be carbon with some orange on it. We're going to see Stake on Monday, which I'm predicting already is going to be a lot of carbon with some bright green lines on it.
He says it here.
It just makes you wonder that, it kind of loses that excitement, and it's not the most interesting color scheme either. Just white and red.
That's been literally Haas's colors almost from the beginning. Yes, we've had the years where they had I think we had the first year where we had the gray in there, and I know a lot of the teams did, and I know I didn't like that gray. But predominantly they've been black, white, and red almost their entire time in Formula One, excluding the year that they had what was that? That energy, rich energy. And then we had the Russian flag on the Haas car. Like, other than that, like that's typically it's been black, white, and red. Like, I don't understand. And this coming from from Tommy Bellingham, that literally will not. I guarantee you, Red Bull, when they roll, because Tommy Bellingham's a big Red Bull fan, I guarantee you he will love the Red Bull livery when it comes out later this month. Just
similar to last year, so it does just feel a bit underwhelming. Whereas it's so weird because on the grid you look at it and it is underwhelming, and you kind of feel like you want to give it like a 3 or a 4 out of 10. But if it was like you separated all the context, everything else, it's actually a really nice, clean looking livery, and they've done a good job with it. But it is just what they've got to deal with this new regulations, which I really hope it changes, because I really don't want to see livery season just become this kind of, here's a carbon car with a line on it.
Hopefully this will change.
Yeah, and like I said, we're gonna get the introduction of the new regulations later on this season for 2026. I truly hope that is the case, and we get away from this so we can go back to the days of like having these exciting car launches with exciting liveries, everything like that. I hope we can have that going into 2026. But unfortunately, that's what we're going to have to deal with for these next 2 years.
Fingers crossed, because we want that identity between each team to be very, very clear. First question comes in from JL Rube.
Oh, we're getting
Every parent
should
have
an ad.
the right to choose the best school
ads.
for their children. But state rep Charlie Guerin disagrees.
Is an underwhelming launch perfectly on brand for Haas?
Again, Haas have always just released pictures. Like, they've never been a team like the likes of Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, all them, where they have this big hour-long, like, circle session where, we talk for like 45 minutes and then introduce the car for like a minute. Like, Haas have never been that way. This is not underwhelming. This is exactly what Haas have always done. Because I believe that they don't find it necessary to blow a bunch of money on a hour-long presentation with 2 minutes worth of releasing the car. They just don't believe in that. And so to call this on brand makes sense, but it's not underwhelming. It's literally what Haas have always been. So I can't wait to hear what they say.
So I know that you're loading up some slander on this team, so we'll wait to see when that one comes out. But I think it is, I guess, on brand with where Haas are, in the sense of they don't have the resource, the facilities, the place in order to maybe host a really amazing car launch. And you know, they probably sit down at the start of the year or the end of last year and go, so what we're going to do for our car launch this year? Well, we don't really have any money to spare. And Gene has been on the phone telling us to save every penny. So having mechanics dancing around with front wings and tyres in their hands and doing all kinds of crazy stuff on our car launch for a car that is probably going to finish 10th in the constructors anyway is probably not the best.
Well, while I probably agree with that, like, they've been... It's sad because I want to see Haas do well, but, you know, with them waiting so long to fire Gunther and to fire Resta, yeah, it may take them a little bit to get caught up this year. And unfortunately, it may just be a little bit too late because, you know, they're going to have to make huge strides going into testing. And luckily, we have a couple weeks before testing, so hopefully we'll see a lot more, you know, new bits, on the car. But, like, I don't understand why we need all this extra BS. Like, just release the car. Do a 2-3 minute video. Like, more teams would be able to save money if they were just do that instead of, like, do all this stupid, weird production stuff.
Use of our resource and money. So yes, it is on brand. I think it very much reflects on where Haas are at the moment, and I didn't expect anything more from them.
No, like you say, it is.
The fact that you expected, if anybody expected more from them, that's silly, because that's not what Haas is. They've never been that way. So I don't understand why anybody thought was going to be anything different at this car launch. Like, it's kind of ridiculous.
Underwhelming, to say the least, which, like this person says, is perfectly on brand for Haas. They don't seem to sort of push the boat out. But what frustrates me is we've just seen Andretti, for example, have their bid rejected, and Andretti are a legendary name. They've won in everything that they've competed in. They're clearly putting so much effort to the point where they were literally like, we've got a car from 2025. And they were really going ham, the facilities.
They didn't
everything.
Have a car.
They've shown how serious they are. And then you get...
They didn't have a car. That's where Tommy's wrong. Now, I know that everybody saw the picture that was out online of the car in the wind tunnel. It was literally an 60 or 80% scale model. It wasn't a 100% scale model. It was literally a 60 to 80% scale model. They would have still need to make the build to 100% size. So the fact, and I get it, I've made the same comparison, but we need to stop with this Andretti and Haas. Just because they're both American teams, like, let's stop comparing the two. Andretti's their own people, Haas are their own people. Haas have one way of running things, Andretti has a different way of running things. So let's stop comparing the two, because it's apples and oranges we're comparing there.
Haas, which are, in my opinion, a waste of a grid spot if Andretti aren't going to be allowed on there, because Gene Haas doesn't want to invest in it. They've got a underwhelming livery, an underwhelming driver lineup, and there's just nothing about them. They have a huge opportunity as this American team when America is like hugely into Formula One at the moment, and they are just not even remotely. They're not even like a likable underdog either, in my opinion. I don't know what it is about them. They're just soulless.
Excuse the fuck out of me. The fact that Tommy Bellingham calls them soulless with no like no ifs, ands, or buts, or, nothing. Just calls him soulless. Oh my God. Like, that's disgusting. That's just, that's disgusting. And Tommy should really be better. Like, I have my own complaints about Haas. I think we all have. Like, they have not put the right front forward. But to call them soulless, like, Tommy, like, I just, that made me extremely disgusted with Tommy. And I know he's never going to see this. He's never going to hear it. He basically called that whole team soulless. So every person in that garage, every, person that's worked as a race director, Gunther Steiner, that whole team, you're literally calling them that is ridiculous. And I will say, great comment here. Haas are hardly trying, though. I wouldn't say they're hardly trying. The fact that they went out and they made the change from Gunther, had they stayed with Gunther, I would say they're not trying to make a change, and they're not trying. I would say that then if they'd have kept Gunther. I think Tommy could have had Tommy not said the soulless part, that's where I would have said he could have kept that out. Yes, you could say that the team is underperforming, that they haven't put the right foot forward. I get that. Totally understand it. I could totally agree with that. But to call him soulless? Like, that's just, like, that's messed up. I wouldn't call anybody soulless. That's that's where I would say I kind of crossed the line on that. But I get what you're saying.
I was like, I'm not going to do much slander. And then ends it saying that they're soulless. Next question comes in from Dom EFC.
And he giggles about it. And this is my other complaint. I'm going to say this is my other complaint about... if you guys have a chance, and I don't know if they still have it up on their Twitch channel... They did not take the Haas livery thing seriously at all. They were literally joking about... They literally started that whole stream talking more and more about Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari. Like, you could clearly tell they did not want to be watching that. And that's where I think part of my other problem is like, if you're going to make comments about the team... then care about watching the stream. Like, watch it and talk about the team. Don't talk... Like, I get it. Lewis Hamilton's the big news story of the day. The big news story of the week. But don't, sit there and talk about Lewis Hamilton. You're not taking it seriously. And I think that's the problem, is that they didn't take this seriously. And they already went into it going in with a predetermined idea of what they thought.
Capitalize on being the only US team and going with a US style livery? I don't know, really, to be honest with you. Maybe it's because they don't have a lot to shout about by being at the back, and maybe that in it.
So I will say, and it's probably been my one and only complaint, is that they haven't gone with a US style livery. But I don't take it. I could take it or leave it. If they did a US style livery, okay, great. But if they didn't, so be it. I could care less. I just want the livery to look like... I want it to look eye-popping and catch my eyes. Yes, they're a U.S. team, but, like... Formula One already has this problem with people from the United States and, the things that we do here in the U.S. I could only imagine the absolute amount of hate if the Haas Formula One team were to throw out, a U.S. style livery, Like, I could just already imagine the hate.
In turn, they just decide to not go down that route because it's not going to benefit them in any way, and if anything, make them potentially more memeable and silly if they're trying to be like, oh yeah, stars and stripes, and they're at the back.
Stick an eagle on the nose cone.
More ads. Like, they've literally added
Tucson
3 ads.
versus Toyota RAV4. Look what Tucson
Let's
has.
skip the
and
ad.
what
Let's
RAV4
move on.
does.
There we go.
Yeah, hire
stars
Logan
and stripes.
Sargent. Boom.
Just go.
You're
for it.
absolutely
No.
sorted. But yeah,
Stop. Like, see, like, it's just all a big joke to them. Like, Logan Sargent, like, I get it. It's an American team. But, like, right now, I get Logan Sargent's with Williams, and I'm waiting to see what he does his second season. But, like, I want them to be competitive, and I don't right now see a lot of U.S. drivers that would be that competitive in Formula One. Like I said, Colton Herta, I think we have yet to really see him in a Formula One car, so we don't know what he can do. So I'm kind of on the fence about, if he's going to be the real deal. But, like, now they want you to over-Americanize the one American team on the grid. Like, which is it? Like, you want more American in F1 or you don't want more American in F1? Like, it's literally like with some people, you can't make them happy.
yeah, I guess it's linked with just the fact they're so hindered by not being able to spend a huge amount of money every year in order to develop this team. They are just trying to survive and praying for a miracle, but that's been going on for quite some time now.
I do feel bad for slandering them, and I want to say, like, this is no disrespect to, like, all the people working there, because clearly the problem is at the top and it's not being funded enough.
A little late on your apology. You don't want to slander him, but you did. That's the problem. You did slander him and called him soulless at that team. Like, I get it. The top of that team, Gene Haas, Gunther Steiner, all them, yeah, I would agree with that. But to call the whole team soulless was just a little
give it
much.
a proper go. So, like, they're already they're never going to be able to compete with the investment and the lack of effort that is being put into them. So they're already, like, on the back foot. So, and it just makes them like a bit of a laughing stock, really.
Anyway, let's move on to another question. This one comes.
The thing is that they're a laughing stock only to the Europeans. Like, that's the thing, is that that people only laugh at them from over the pond, I feel like. I don't see it necessarily happening as much in the US as much as I see it online from, like, the European fans.
Comes in from Sam Dougie Douglas.
Maybe I'm wrong.
If you were Haas, would you not just give up and sell to Andretti?
Let's see what they have to say. I'm sure they'll probably
I
say,
think
yeah,
I
you
can see
should.
this being probably the way out. I don't know how many years down the line Gene Haas decides to continuously burn money here, but I think eventually they will just go, there's no point anymore. But the fact that they've sacked Gunter to get another team principal in gives me the impression that they're at least going to give this until the new regulations, if not maybe a year into that, to roll the dice again
Yeah.
to see if they can come up with something that's decent. And if not, if at the end of 2026 they're still not
And I
great,
agree. They've
that's when
made
they
a
bin it
couple
off and
changes there at the
potentially
top.
sell. That's, in my
that-
head, the journey for Haas from here.
Especially, like, if Haas really want to promote their power tools or whatever, just sell the team, use that money, and stick a big Haas logo on the Andretti or something. What are they getting out of Formula One at the
never do
moment?
Yeah, I can't watch this anymore. Like, it's while I understand the thought that Tommy's throwing out there, which I mean, it makes sense. I mean, that's the thing, is that what Tommy's saying is not totally inaccurate. Like, it just, like, I just feel like that they've not taken Haas, like, that whole podcast, or that podcast and that live stream, just, it was hate towards Haas from the very beginning. Like, the fact that Matt Gallagher then brings up during the middle of the Twitch stream that that Charles Leclerc went live on his Instagram to troll Haas. Like, it's like that. They didn't care. They didn't want to be there. They didn't want to talk about Haas. They didn't want to be there to talk about it. And I hate that, like, you're a Formula One channel. You're there to talk about Haas. Like, don't, like, tell all the other people that are bringing up Lewis Hamilton and whatever else, like, hey, we're here for Haas. Like, this is a Haas car livery. Let's stick with that. But the fact they didn't, it really does, at least in my eyes, it makes them look bad. Like, they didn't take anything serious. They didn't take any of it seriously. And you could tell they just didn't want to be there for a Haas car launch. Like, literally, I truly feel like Matthew Gallagher just wanted to talk more about Lewis Hamilton on a live stream more than anything else. But we're going to leave it at that today. That is episode 1 of the F1nal Lap podcast. We're going to try to do these every Sunday. Sometimes they'll be live, sometimes they'll be recorded, but we will always try to do a podcast. So this is episode 1 of the 2024 season. Guys, let me know in the comment section down what you guys thought of this episode, what you guys think of Andretti not being allowed in, Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari, and the Haas hate from the P1 podcast with Matt and Tommy. Let me know that in the comment section down below, guys. As always, slap a like on these videos for more daily and weekly Formula One content. We've got car launches galore this week, so we'll be covering that. So much more coming up as we get ready to head into the 2024 season. And guys, if you are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It means the absolute world to me, and it would really help out the channel. But guys, thank you so much for watching episode 1 of the F1nal Lap podcast. My name is Eric Ringel, and for the American F1 fan, I'm Eric Ringel, signing off.